Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Gritters. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Hello, and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. Today we have a delightful guest. At the risk of this sounding like a
Hilarities to be proven.
Okay, you're right. We'll see. I'm trying to lead you down this path. It's me and then three sisters, and I have a little brother who's 13 and a half years younger than I am. And Dave is somebody who tells it straight and tells it quick. And he's funny, really funny. So I'm saying that for failure. But I'm glad to have him here. And I'm going to ask him some questions so it kind of comes across as an interrogation for a second, and you'll understand why. Hey, how many children? They were not done children?
I have 5 pages of spreadsheet
Yeah,
to keep track of it all.
yeah,
There are 56 grandchildren,
yeah,
and there is one
yeah.
that we know is coming.
Yeah.
He's a grandson,
Uh-huh.
and we're excited about his arrival. It's a great posterity.
It's a great poster. In fact, I don't know anybody who has as many. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised, and just some interesting ideas about you.
I was born in community out in, let's see, I got to back up. I was born in that apartment. My parents lived in an apartment in Salt Lake, and that's where I was born. And it happens that I'm within 2 weeks, 78th trip around the sun. So that's where I was born. And my earliest recollections of childhood revolved around a little community out in West Salt Lake called Rose Park. And that's where I grew up. And it was an idyllic setting. There was the end of World War II, and all the fathers had come home and from war. And as part of that baby boom generation, there were lots of kids to play with. And I see these feeds that come in on X all the time into my cell phone about, is it really true that you stayed out all night until the sun went down and that you were free to roam? And the answer is yes, it was true. It would never happen in today's world, I guess, but it certainly was true of my childhood. We all had bicycles, and we rode those bikes up and down the street. We played baseball in the highway until we saw a car coming in. We'd scream car. Then we'd all run to the parking, and then we'd resume our game when the car went by. And we did all those kinds of things. So it was an idyllic childhood as far as I was concerned. And and then later we moved to Federal Heights.
How old were you when you moved up to Federal?
Oh, let's see. I would have been probably 8. And I was the oldest of my family. I was baptized in the Federal Heights ward, and it was a quantum leap up from Rose Park. It was well, and I was thinking about this the other day. As you know, I'm writing my memoirs while I'm thinking about it.
Oh, thank you.
That's Volume 5.
Wow.
And my bride is on the cover.
Yeah.
And there are more stories. So I've been reflecting on a lot of that, and I was thinking last night, and Bill was the editor of the Deseret News, who succeeded my grandfather as the sports editor. My grandpa Goetz had been the sports editor at the Deseret News for many years, and so there was that connection as well. And my dad and Bill Smart were great tennis buddies. They played tennis together. And his son, Bill Jr., and me also played with our fathers. We had a lot of fathers and sons.
Did you find that enjoyable?
Loved it.
Yeah.
My grandfather gave my father some really good advice, and he said, Brent, include your sons in the sports that you love. So that meant of necessity that we were basketball fans. and we were tennis fans. He didn't ever play baseball, but baseball was my passion. But as a result, my dad put me on the tennis court at a very young age. We had a lot of great matches in the fathers and sons tournaments. Back in those days, there were two competing newspapers in Salt Lake. One was the Deseret News and one was the Tribune. And as I remember, the Tribune was the one that sponsored this fathers and sons tournaments. So we played in a lot of those. And it was called the No Champs tournament, meaning that if you won, you couldn't play in that division anymore. So we persisted until we finally won, and then it was over. Well, I think I was about 16 when that happened. But my dad taught me tennis, and he loved to go to basketball games. He had season tickets to the Anderson Field House, and this is dating me, but I remember Barry the Hill McGill and Jerry Lucas.
I vaguely remember that.
Jerry Lucas played for Ohio State. Right. And they had a lot of great tilts, and we were right there on the front row. The floor was elevated, and the seating was kind of down lower. So we were looking up, and it just made them seem that much taller. But those are great times. Great times.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about, two really, really interesting grandfathers. Tell me a little bit about both of them.
Well, I mentioned Les Goats. He had a column in the Deseret News called Let's Go with Les Goats. And he wrote sports for 35 years for the Deseret News. And that's what took him out of Lehigh up into Salt Lake. And he would prepare his column every day. And this was back in the day when all you had was a typewriter. And so he would bang away on his typewriter, and then he would have it on a galley sheet, and then he would take it into the newspaper. And when he first began, he was actually doing the typesetting for his own articles himself. And so it was a tremendous endeavor, but he was much beloved by sports fans everywhere. In fact, when I went on my mission to England, I met a man over there who asked me when he saw who I was, and he heard my name. He said, "You related to Les Goats?" And I said, "He's my grandfather." It says, "I used to read his columns all the time when I was in Fat Lake."
Really?
So
fun.
I couldn't outrun Les Goats.
Yeah. What was he like, Dave?
Oh, he was a dynamic, fun-loving man who that came from a family of 14 children. And he was much beloved. And that family, the best way to characterize that family was they were so full of love for one another that they always got together on Memorial Day in Lehigh at the old church down there. And honestly, as a little boy, I was bored to tears with what they were doing in the program. We'd always go out on the field next door and we'd play baseball while they were doing whatever they did. And as I got older, I began to appreciate more and more the interactions that I saw going on with these family members and the love that was so prevalent in their interactions with one another. So it was a marvelous exposure.
On the goat side, did you ever know your great grandfather goats?
No, I did not. They were gone by the time I had any recollections.
Nowadays, because of the increasing life expectancy, usually there's at least an anticipation that you'll know your grandfather, maybe even know great-grandfathers, which I think is pretty cool.
I did not. On the other family that we're going to talk about in a minute, I did know my great-grandmother. She lived into her 80s. My great-grandfather now had passed away. But my grandmother, I can't leave the goats. And talking about Lita, her name was Lita Merle Kirkham Goats. And they met in Lehigh when she was a student in my grandfather's English class.
Really?
It was scandalous. they fell in love, and then World War I ensued, and he was called into the military, and he went up to Fort Lewis, Washington, where they had a military wedding, and later came home and consummated their marriage in the Salt Lake Temple. But she was absolute epitome of a grandmother.
Was she?
She had the white hair in a bun up on top of her head. She was roly-poly. We had Thanksgiving dinner at her home every year for as long as I remember. And their home was just a tiny little home out on 33rd South. And she put tables together and crowded us all in, and it was heaven.
Yeah.
She was a marvelous cook. And lots of fun memories of Grandma does. She used to sing Hi Ho for Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. And she'd get up and do her little jig, and
She did her 80s.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was hysterical, and we loved it.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were marvelous. Marvelous hooker.
So you were at the blessed by the goat side.
Absolutely.
In spades.
Yeah.
So tell us about the other side of the family for you.
My mom was the second daughter of Harold B. Lee and Fern Lucinda Tanner Lee. And they only had two children. My grandmother, Fern, we called her Nana, was not able to have any more children. She had extreme difficulty in both of those childbirths. And so we felt fortunate to come through her lines. She played the violin, and my Auntie Mar, who was the older sister, played the piano. And the two of them played in every single chapel in Salt Lake, and in the years they were growing up. And they were quite a featured musical member all the time, and they enjoyed that. And even in family settings, they would still entertain.
Break out the violin.
Entertain us.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather was Harold B. Lee, who was the 11th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I never knew anything other than the fact that he was our apostle. I don't remember him when he wasn't. And so that was obviously an incredible blessing for all of us, but especially for me as his oldest grandson. Because of him, I developed a love of the scriptures that has never waned. And I had this impression that I had to learn it all on my own, because I didn't want to ever be accused of just being the talking head that was parroting everything that he had ever. And so I did. I undertook my own quest and my own journey. And that was a lifetime quest that still continues.
So 13 kids, and 12 of them are living.
Yeah.
Like, tell us about your daughter who passed away.
Adrian was on this earth for 49 days, 7 days in 7 weeks, which was it was a sign to me of a complete cycle. 49 days was a biblical reality, and the 50th year was always the Jubilee year, when all of the fields would lay fallow and they would rest. But when I put that math together in the aftermath of her sudden passing, I was at peace, knowing that she had filled a measure of her creation, that she was here as long as she needed to be, and then she was gone. We had a very difficult time selecting her name. And we waited and waited and waited. We had a name on the birth certificate when we left the hospital. And with every other one of our children, that had been the case, but not with her.
So how did you come up with a?
It was just meant to be. And it was a spelling that neither one of us had looked at. But when we saw it and we thought about it, we talked about it, it was just perfect. And so we named her, we got the birth certificate, and within a matter of days, she was gone. And her death was ruled as a SIDS death, and I didn't know anything about that. But it was called sudden infant death syndrome. She she was perfect in every way. There was nothing to indicate that she would be deficient in any way. Uh, but I put her to bed one night. I said to Patsy, "You go to bed, and I'll stay with her." She was fussy, and I took her down on the couch in the living room and nurtured her and patted her and put her down on the couch when she finally called down. It was about 2 in the morning. Mm-hmm. But I said to Patsy, "I've got a flight to Chicago in the morning. Mm-hmm. Well, I can sleep on the plane, but you go to bed." And so she did. We awakened the next morning. It was to the scream of my daughter Emily, who discovered her body on the couch.
Wow.
So it was a shock. It was it was something that we had never anticipated, obviously, and every one of those children, because of their ages, processed it a little bit differently. But it was a big surprise.
Did you, I mean, how long did, what ways did you have to go through it or endure the grief?
Yes, for a year afterward, at least speaking for myself, it was extremely difficult for me because I bore so much guilt. I'd been the last one to be with her. And when I put her down, I thought, is there something I did or didn't do that I should have done? And I couldn't come up with anything, and I just spun around and around and around. I would, on my travels to and from the city, I would hear radio programs where they discussed SIDS, and there were so many conjectures going on about how that could be prevented, and they talked about laying the baby on the stomach or on the back and making sure there's no bedding that suffocates them. But there was never any definitive explanation for HABA, which is why they came up with the non-equatorial and sudden infant death.
What do you chalk it up to?
I think she came for the season that she was to come for, and then she was complete with her mission, and she went on. And Patsy and I rarely discussed it after that, but many of the children have discussed it openly in terms of their ministering, having been ministered to by Adrian specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they've all felt her comfort, and they've all felt her presence. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was all part and parcel of what that was all intended to be.
Have you had any experiences with Adrian?
No.
Did Patsy?
No. Right at the very end of her life, Patsy talked about feeling drawn to Adrian. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was unusual because we had never openly discussed it until the very end.
I think it's really interesting that your kids, some of them, had experiences with Adrian.
Some of them have seen her and reported that she was a fully grown adult female that looked a lot like Melanie, who's one of our daughters. And they described her as having long, dark hair and brown eyes, and described her in quite a bit of detail.
Wow.
So
I imagine that's one of the exquisite moments of grief in your life. Tell us about Patsy's death.
Patsy and I were married for almost 54 years. And we had just been on a vacation back east for our youngest son Andrew's graduation from medical school. Or I guess it was from his residency, was it? Yeah, it was from his residency. And so we had been back to the Mayo Clinic and had gone through all of the ceremonial rituals at dinner with them, and we toured around the city and had a marvelous visit with them. And then we visited 6 temples in 6 states in 6 days on the way back home.
Wow.
And of course, that's where we derived so much joy, was spending a lot of time to the temples.
Mm-hmm.
And there was absolutely no indication that anything wrong with her at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then our last stop in Cheyenne, Wyoming, of all places, we got a phone call about our stepmother, Julie, who had been married to Patsy's father, had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. And so we rushed home.
Mm-hmm.
And Patsy was with her for final hours of true death.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 weeks later, Patsy was gone. But there was no
indication.
no indication at all.
Mm-hmm.
She complained about not feeling comfortable, and I took her into the doctor, and they did an exam, and he prescribed a medication before her. She was complaining of heart pains, and so we really thought she was having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. It was carditis, I think, and he had a remedy for it, and we took it home. But here's another story about Patsy, which just indicates her personality. When we were in the emergency room that night, we checked in, and there came a young woman with her mother, who was in excruciating pain. She was gently holding her arm, and turned out she had broken her arm, but she was in so much pain. Patsy just said, "You go in first," and she let this mother go ahead of her.
That's typical Patsy.
Because that's who she was.
Yeah.
That was instinctively who she was.
Yeah.
And so this mother did. We met him later in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
She had her arm all bandaged up, and it was in a brace, and
Mm-hmm.
she confirmed that she had broken her arm, and that was what causing the pain was. But
Mm-hmm.
that was just indicative of who Patsy was. But anyway, we got through the carditis, and 1 week later, she was in more pain. And we went in, had the doctor examine her. He couldn't find anything wrong. There was no indication. She just had this overall malaise that couldn't be explained. And then she couldn't walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put her in a wheelchair, moving around the house. And then she couldn't even sit up in the wheelchair. She got the doctor on the phone. She said, I need some hospice care. And he says, what? You don't need hospice care. You're fine. She said, no. She would not get off the phone with him until he ordered the hospice bed.
Were you kind of rolling your eyes at him? I
was just dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Andrew had come down. He was, at that time, had settled in his practice up in the Northwest. And he had flown down and came straight from the airport to the doctor's office. So he was in the office with the doctor while Patsy was having this conversation with him on the phone. And I never heard a word from Andrew until he got up to the house, and he had made the arrangements, and we got the hospice bed set up.
Mm-hmm.
The nurse came in, and she said, now I'm going to give you as much care as you need and let your mind be at ease. So we put her in the hospice bed. As she said, she'd never felt a more comfortable bed in her whole life.
Really?
And it lasted 2 days, and then she was gone.
Wow.
And it turned out that when they got her to the hospital again for an emergency room visit, they diagnosed her with sepsis. Yes, it was in 3 locations in her body. She had it in her heart, she had it in her urinary tract,
Mm-hmm.
and she had it in her foot, which meant, she could walk. But the sepsis advanced so rapidly that they couldn't get it time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was gone within 12 hours.
What are a couple of lessons that you've learned from both Adrian and Patsy's deaths and you think might be good for all of us grandpas and all 12 people following this channel? Please come and listen. What are some things that kind of popped in?
First that death is not to be feared.
Mm-hmm.
I I think origin stories are important
Mm-hmm.
for people to understand. And one of the questions that Emily asked me was, what stories do your grandchildren love to hear you tell?
Mm-hmm.
And invariably, the questions I get fed questions to get the content for these books. And one that keeps coming up again and again is, how did you meet Patsy? And how did you fall in love? And how did you know she was the one? Or none of that. So let me tell that story first. We met at the invitation of my mother, who was serving as the president of the Wasatch Elementary PTA. So she was down at the school a lot, and Patsy was doing her student teaching.
Mm-hmm.
She was in elementary. Need for a date to the Sigma Chi formal, and I had been to 4 sorority formalists, but I didn't want to ask any of them because I thought I don't want to get into the right.
Sending the wrong message.
Send the wrong message. Well, I'm interested because I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, why don't you ask that cute Patsy Hewlett? And I thought, oh, yeah, that sounds good. So I went upstairs, got on the upstairs extension, and I called her, and mother answered the phone.
You used a cell phone, right?
It was the plug in the wall extension.
With the long extension cord.
Back in the day when there was a phone book. I said, this is Dave Ghost. Is Patsy there? And she goes, yes, just a moment. She was so excited. And Patsy came on the line, and I posited that I would like to take her to the Sigma Chi formal. And she said, oh, yes, of course. And that's how it all began.
It was a magical evening, wasn't it?
It was a totally out of left field. It was so magical. We tripled, and we were in a station wagon. Any of you younger folks, you not appreciate this story. But there was a rear-facing seat.
Yeah.
And we were seated in the rear-facing seat, looking out backwards of the station wagon. And all we did was talk to one another all night long. We got there late. The food had all been served, and all the food was gone, so there was nothing to eat. And the dance band was taking a break, so we weren't dancing. We were on the sidelines, and we were just talking all night long, and our souls just connected completely. I don't know how to explain that. I listen to my grandchildren talking about their love life these days, and I just have to laugh because it's so complicated. And for us, it was never complicated. It was so simple.
I've like to yank on the chain. My grandkids are telling that I had a pet dinosaur. They look at me like, and they half believe, but half don't believe. But anyway, I've gotten some mileage out of that.
Well, anyway, it was a glorious evening together, and I think we may have danced once, if I remember. And they had, as we customarily did, they had favors at the formal, and our colors in the fraternity were gold and blue. So what do you think they picked as a favor? A snifter, a brandy snifter, with a pedestal filled with water and blue rocks in the bottom and a goldfish floating around in the water. Like, that was the favorite. That was the best we could come up with, I guess. Well, so what did we do? Stupid teenagers that we were. Well, we weren't teenagers. We were older then, but we put this brandy snifters between our feet on the floor of this rear-facing seat, and we tried to balance it with our feet so the water didn't spill out. Why didn't we just dump the water out?
I mean, Dave,
and let the goldfish.
I'm a little worried you got you were Twitter page. Yeah.
We were lost in love right from that moment until the day she left. So that's my long origin story.
Yeah.
Prefacing what I'm now going to say, which was when she was in the hospital and we were trying to figure out the diagnosis. It was difficult because they couldn't find the source until they did, and then it was conclusive. They had to give her, they prescribed massive doses of antibiotics to try and get in touch and reverse the sepsis. And it was all to no avail. And I remember by then I'd been up for 2 nights and I hadn't had any sleep, and I remember going to her bedside and gently stroking her cheek, and trying to get a response out of her by talking to her, none of which was efficacious, and so she died later that morning, early in the morning. We were in the hospital on the day of July 24th, and by 5 o'clock the next morning, she was gone. It was just that fast.
Wow.
And it was Melanie by then, when I could see she could see that I'd come to some settlement of my awareness. She drove me home, and I went to bed. About 5 in the morning, she came in and said she's gone, and that was my confirmation that she was gone.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of the story is, so what have you done for the last 2 years? I can say this about the death of your loved one. The shock eventually passed. But the loneliness never goes away. And you can assuage it, and it comes and goes, but you're never fully healed. There's always an empty space, and that's been my experience with what's ensued in the last 2 years. Having said that, it is my absolute conviction that she is not gone forever. When I looked at her lifeless body in the mortuary, and later on at the funeral and the viewing, I knew that what I was looking at was just the mortal remains. But their spirit, however, had moved on. And so death for me is not a permanent solution. I absolutely believe that we will be together again. I know it. And there's no question we'll run. And I know it as certainly today as I did that first night with the Subaru friend.
I guess it makes it easier in some ways, maybe, but still you have to go through the grief.
It doesn't go away. And it's, no one could ever have explained that to me to my satisfaction before this happened. Because there would have been no frame of reference to understanding it. But I just believe it with all my heart. I spend a lot of time in the temples these days. There are a lot of temples in Utah, and I feel blessed to be so close to so many of them. And I can go once or twice a week to a temple of my own choosing. Patsy and I were temple workers in Salt Lake, and had that as a permanent assignment until the temple closed. And so that was always an integral part of our lives, and it continues to be important to me. And I cherish those moments. Oftentimes my children will join me if they're available, and we have great technologies. I got a birthday coming up, and Diane, my oldest daughter, asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, let's go get a temple ceiling. We've done that before, on Patsy's birthday just recently in April of this year, and we'll do it again, and we'll do it many other times, I'm sure. And there's just nothing quite like that.
That leads me to this question. What is the best way for a grandfather of how many? 56? Oh, God.
Plus 13.
Plus 13. What's the best way for a grandfather / great-grandfather to share their faith with their grandkids?
Well, that's the reason I'm writing these books. I have this gift that was passed down to me, starting with Franthog Oates down to my dad was a great writer. He wrote the definitive biography about Harold E. Lee. And so they both had that gift, inherited it through no merit of my own, but I had loved writing. And since past his death, had that outlet, which I think has helped dramatically in processing the grief, because I can pour it all out on paper and hope that it's beneficial and instructive to my posterity. I have taken the position that nothing's off the table. You can ask me anything you want.
That's been my experience with Dave too. Let's go back to your grandpa, Lee. I'm aware of a couple of interesting stories. We talked about them briefly.
Yeah.
Apparently, you had or have a temper, David. Is that right? And how was that manifested playing baseball? What did you learn from your grandpa?
I played baseball in the Ensign League in Little League. And my dad would drive over. It was a short drive over from the LDSI, the baseball field where we played. And on occasion, grandfather would be there. We never called him Grandpa. We called him grandfather because there is a spirit to know his position was.
Yeah, of course.
But he was very personable and he was as common and down to earth as they could be. But I think just out of respect for his position, we always referred to him as grandfather Ray. Anyway, he came to a game one day. I slid in home and was called out, and of course the stands were right behind the backstop, and he witnessed this whole event up close and personal, and I just stood up and screamed and jumped up and down and yelled at the umpire, and I lost my temper. And I don't know how long it was. It was 2 or 3 weeks maybe after that. But I got this letter in the mail, which is so bad preserved. And along with the letter came this new fielder's mitt, which he had purchased for me. And he said, it was a 2-page letter. And it was very well-reasoned and well thought out. And he essentially said, David, I have noticed that you have a tendency to lose your temper. And as a young man, I had a temper too. It's a very debilitating character trait. I'm going on now. And here's my bargain with you. You can use this fielder's mitt, which is the finest on the market. And it was a Nakona, which most people would not even know about.
Right.
But it really was the finest mitt he could find. And he said, as long as you can maintain your temper on the field, you may use this mitt. But the moment you lose your temper, the mitt comes back to me. And that was the deal. And it says, please acknowledge your acceptance of this offer by signing below.
Serious?
Yes, it was a contract. And so with some trepidation, I wanted the mitt. And I said, yes, I can do that. Well, the mitt went back and forth a couple of times that season. And he wasn't always there to watch the game, but he got reports. So that was his way of mentoring me. And he did similar things with others in our family.
What kind of one-on-one memory is the best memory you have of Les, how your grandpa Les goes?
Oh, I think here's a great one. I was playing the piano when I was a young man growing up, and that was my musical talent that I had been assigned. And he was a lover of the hymns, and his favorite was Reverently and Meekly Now. And he said, when you can memorize and play this hymn perfectly on the piano, I will give you a silver dollar. And so I worked on it. And when my piano teacher heard about it, she wrote a special arrangement. And she did it in handwritten staff paper and gave it back to me. And that's the one I memorized. And it was a beautiful arrangement.
Can you still play it?
No. Yeah. I've lost the music long ago. Can I still play the piano? If you press me into service, I can.
Your service?
Not like I was at one time. Well, that was...
So when he gave you the silver dollar, do you still have the silver dollar? David. I'm not trying to shame you here, but I'll bet it was a wonderful event.
It was. It was great. They had a baby grand piano in their little home out in Sugar House. And then when they moved to 33rd South, they gave it to my father, and it was a black, uh, beautiful baby grand that resided in my father's home, and that was the piano that I learned to play on.
Mm-hmm.
And they bought a little spinet, which they put in their hall, and that frees their south. So it was that little spinet that I played for them to do this performance. So that's just one example, but he was a consummate sports fan, and obviously he's a sports writer. He's the grandfather every kid really wanted us. He took us to the press box at the old Bees Stadium.
Yeah.
And I still remember, and it was a tiny compressed area, not very big. But we would go sit in the bleachers, and then one by one we'd go up inning after inning and very cool. Through the press box.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gave us stock in the Salt Lake Bees.
Did he really? You still have that stock
I
certificate?
still have that.
Okay, we got that one.
I still have it in a little book of remembrance.
Man, you need to frame that one. That'd be pretty
Yeah,
cool.
well, it is.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
It was $1 a share.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Dave and I go to lunch once a month, once every other month. And for a while, when we were business partners, we practically every day, it seemed, and we would have these very frank discussions. And Dave is, I hold Dave in this incredibly high pedestal of a father. And I have learned great lessons from you that I've incorporated with my kids over the years. The biggest one, if you press me, would be your honesty. I mean, you are just honest with your boys. And with your girls, but there's no hide the ball. There's no kind of like do what I say, not what I do, sort of a thing. And we talk about these wide-ranging politics, scriptures, the spiritual things, fun stuff. And I had a lunch with him maybe 7 years ago. And Dave he was a little on the dour side. And I'd like Dave, as I set this story up, I'd like Dave to tell our listeners, all 27 of you, why you were a little dour and then what happened and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned from that experience.
I've survived what at the time was a really mysterious slow-growing tumor in my brain that I didn't know about. And we went to our primary care physician, and he ran me through a battery of tests, and they referred me to a specialist, and they ran me through more tests, and then there was another specialist got involved. And all along the way, there was no finding. And Patsy finally went back to our primary care physician, and she insisted that they do an MRI on my brain. And he was reluctant to do it because he said there's no indication that there's anything going on in his brain. And she said, yeah, something's up. And so he ordered the MRI. And I still remember him coming back in a couple of days later with the finding in his office, and he got down on his knee in front of her, seated in his exam room, and begged for her forgiveness. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. He said, there is something going on here. And there's a brain tumor that's about the size of a baseball log. And I'm going to send you to Dr. Schmidt, University Hospital, and let him evaluate this MRI result and make a recommendation. So that's what we did. Long story short, I ended up in surgery the very week that COVID restrictions kicked in. It was 5 years ago. So my son dropped me off at the hospital at 5 in the morning at the curb because he couldn't go in to the hospital.
Wow.
So I walked in, and they put me through all the prep work, and I was still relatively coherent at that point. I learned later that the only thing that was still working in my body was my heart and my lungs, and everything else had shut down.
Really?
Yeah. So they prepped me for the surgery, and it was 12 and a half hours of light. And they did an incision from one ear up over the top to the other ear, peeled my face down, took a section of the skull, the frontal section of my skull out, and then they proceeded to remove the tumor. Wow. And it was 12 and a half hours, and nobody was with me. They were all prohibited from being there in the hospital. And anyway, long story short, Patsy had a friend, or I guess it was Diane who had a friend who worked in the hospital, who secreted Patsy into my recovery against all the rules that they put in place on COVID. And when I woke up and saw her staring down at me, all I could say was, "I love you." And she said, "I love you too." She was relieved that I was still coherent, because there have been, I think, a lot of debates about whether or not I ever would be again.
Dementia was one thing that some of was battered around.
People had an opinion. I think the betting odds were about 50-50 that I would survive.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm on the chubber. But anyway, I did survive, and long story short, it took a while to relearn. I went through some physical therapy. I had to learn how to walk and go up and down stairs, and it's kind of fun minutes. I haven't learned that all over again. And when I did, we finally went back home, and I felt like I've been reborn. It was, and you can still debate this, and I'm sure some of my children still do to this day, whether or not I still had the better parts of my brain left. I think I do.
I think you did.
But it's debatable.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Anyway, that was a great adventure that Patsy and I went on together. She was instrumental in all.
So, kind of coming down the home stretch, this is a tough one, a tough question, because I'm going to ask you to distill some lessons that you have learned personally, either through wonderful successes or, dare I say, some failures. People out there who have kids that are looking at becoming grandparents themselves or parents. What are some things that you would give as hard-earned pieces of advice?
Always obey the counsel of your companion.
Really?
When we first got married, one of the questions I asked Patsy was, "So how many children do you think you want to have?" Her immediate response was, "At least 12. And I looked at her and I go, "What?"
Yeah.
And so the lesson I learned was to fall in line, then start marching, and accept that she might be onto something here. And that's exactly how many she had, plus our bonus baby of Adrian.
Yeah.
Now, you can say whatever you want about guessing and prognostication, all of that, but I think she was a deeply invested mother right from the get-go. And
you recognized that, though.
I knew that, and so people say to me all the time, "Well, she must have had really easy pregnancies," and I said, "No, her pregnancies were agony, pure and simple." And for 9 months, she suffered all kinds of ailments and complaints, and she bore it all gracefully. And then when those babies were born, and they were laid into her arms, her exuberance was off the charts. I mean, she was so thrilled with. Speaking of naming babies, we could never name them until we looked into their face.
Really?
And when we did, that's when the name came. All with the exception of Adrian. But what I've learned is that she did all the heavy lifting, and I was just the cheerleader, and I was the facilitator to help as much as I could to make that happen. But so my advice to young people is don't fear anything. If you had chosen the way I chose, your eternal companion, and you know it, and she knows it, there's nothing to fear. And I say that with the voice of experience now, down into this new chapter. And even this chapter, I find, so that's my counsel. Don't fear the unknown.
Here's another question, kind of down the same road. What are 1 or 2 or 3 or 15 of your greatest strengths, do you think, as a grandfather? What would you say? How would you answer?
Well, as a grandfather, I tried to exhibit my love in every way that I know how. Let me just give you one example, small example. We got into the pattern of writing birthday cards and including in each birthday card a $2 bill. $2 bills, by the way, for real. And you
can still get them?
You can get them at the bank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can. It's just a small token. More important than the $2 bill is the message you card. And I'm trying to, as fully as I possibly know how, to express my love to them each time.
That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here. I gotta go take them out.